Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. We're going to sit down and talk about recruitment today because I think it's really important that we have this discussion. Obviously with the upcoming transfer window coming up, for me, one of the biggest transfer windows, if not the biggest transfer window for Everton Football Club for years and years, and definitely Marcel Brands' biggest transfer window since joining the club a couple of years ago. Everton have wasted far too much money within the last 4 to 5 years since majority shareholder Farhad Moshiri took out his 47% share in the football club. We've spent nearly £500 million on players that are either complete dross and nowhere near good enough for the football club, or just simply don't fit the systems and just don't fit in well at the football club, whether that be players with poor attitudes, players that have got talent but don't really want to try, players that are coming to the club towards the end of the career to just pick up another wage and then move on and go and retire somewhere, a retirement package if you like. Whatever the reason may be, we've wasted far too much money and it has to stop now. It really does have to stop. Like I said, Farhad Moshiri took over in 2016 and Everton have spent somewhere between 300 to 500 million pounds on players, and that's not net spend, that's not taking away the money that we've got from selling the likes of Romelu Lukaku and Idrissa Gana Gueye, because I'm not really interested in looking at that part, because I understand that we've made a little bit of money back, but if we're being totally honest with ourselves, the only players that we've made significant money back are probably Idrissa Gana Gueye and Romelu Lukaku. Everybody else has gone for an okay fee or a below par fee, let's be perfectly honest. So we've spent nearly £500 million since Farhad Moshiri took over his stake at the football club in 2016, and we arguably look worse than we did £500 million ago. One thing I can definitely tell you before Farhad Moshiri took over from Everton, and I'm not blaming Farhad Moshiri on this whatsoever, but one thing I can definitely tell you, in the days of David Moyes, when we didn't have much money and we were scraping around the Championship looking for players, and we were buying the likes of Tim Cahill from Millwall and taking a chance on him, and we were buying the Andy Johnsons, and we were going to Spain and purchasing the Mikel Arteta for next to nothing. One thing that near enough every single player had in those sides was fight, was heart, was passion, was desire, was a want to win, was a want to play for David Moyes' Everton, was an underdog feeling that every time they went on the pitch, they weren't necessarily the best footballers in the world and sometimes would get our asses handed, but one thing you can absolutely 100% say is that they'd give it 110% in every single game. You would very rarely come away from watching an Everton game in that era of the football club and say we didn't try our hardest today or the players didn't look hard. You come away multiple times and say we were shite, we've got absolutely battered there, but very rarely did you come away saying the players didn't look like they give a fuck today. Whereas far too many times in the last 4 to 5 years, like I said, we've seen Everton players waltz onto the pitch, walk around, pick up 60, 70, 80,000 pounds a week and then fuck off and go and sit in their mansions and look like they could not give a fuck about our football club, and it's just not good enough and it has to stop. It really does have to stop. Marcel Brands has been at the club for 2 years. I want to talk about Marcel Brands because I think it's imperative that we mention him in the conversation, because there's a lot of fans at the moment that are sort of, you know, a little bit undecided on whether Marcel Brands has done well since he's come in at the football club, and there's some fans saying that if he doesn't have a positive transfer window this season, then he should leave the club next season. So Brands has got 1 year left on his contract, and a 3-year contract a couple of years ago, obviously when Marco Silva first come into the club, and since he's joined the club he signed the likes of Richarlison, Luca Dean, Bernard, Moise Keane, Alex Iwobi, Fabian Delph, Andre Gomez obviously initially on loan and then on a permanent, Jean-Philippe Gabam, and he signed a lot of players since joining the football club, Yerry Mina as well to add to that. So again, there's a couple of names in there that I think we can't say anything against. The likes of Richarlison, the likes of your Luca Dean. Okay, Luca Dean hasn't had the most consistent season this season, but overall he's been a very good performer for Everton and he is one of our better performers. Richarlison cannot say a word against. He seems like the only player at times that has got that desire and that fight and that want to win. And then some of the others that are still very much undersized, I think for a lot of Evertonians, Yerry Mina I think falls into that category, Bernard falls into that category, Jean-Philippe Gabam obviously we don't know about, and then there's the few players that just simply haven't worked out and should never have been purchased in the first place, whether it be your Fabian Delphs, your Alex Iwobis, players that just don't fit the football club and have been claimed that they've really just come into the football club to pick up a wage and you know, get a nice little retirement package before they go off and ultimately retire. and finish their career playing in a lower league. And to be honest, I can't disagree with those comments, because from some of the performances I've seen from said players, and not just players that Marcel Brands has brought in, but players over the years, you know, it's evident to see that that is the case. So obviously Marcel Brands got 1 year left on his contract, and like I said at the start of the video, for me this is the biggest transfer window that Everton have had in quite some time. It really, really is. It's the first transfer window where we've got a manager in Carlo Ancelotti who is one of the best managers in world football. Obviously, since Farhad Moshiri has come into the football club, David Moyes has left. Farhad Moshiri come in just after Roberto Martinez took over. We've then had Roberto Martinez, Ronald Koeman, Marco Silva, obviously David Unsworth in interim basis, but we won't talk too much about him because it's unfair. Sam Allardyce as well. We've had a lot of managers in that period of time, and all of those managers have spent a lot of money on a lot of shite. Let's be perfectly honest. You've got the likes of Oumar Niasse coming in under Roberto Martinez. Obviously the likes of Davy Klaassen coming in under Ronald Koeman, Gylfi Sigurdsson as well coming in during that period. Theo Walcott coming in under Sam Allardyce, Marco Silva bringing players in that are still, you know, question marks about, whether it be Alex Iwobi, whether it be Bernard, who again, Bernard coming in a free, but the wages we have to take into consideration when talking about this as well, Fabian Delph. So this is the first, obviously, proper transfer window for Carlo Ancelotti, and like I said, the biggest transfer window for me that the club has had for quite some time, because this isn't a manager who you can fuck about. This isn't a manager who you can say, right, okay, you might want him, him and him, but I'm going to go out and get him, him and him, because I think they work. For me, Marcel Brands and Carlo Ancelotti have to work together, and they have to decide who the right players are for the football club. And if Carlo Ancelotti believes a certain player is the right type of player for Everton Football Club, then that player needs to come in, because at the end of the day, he has been there, he's won it all, he's done everything, and he'll know an awful lot more than any of the previous managers of this football club have known because of his experience. And like I said, again, we can't afford to be bringing in players that are simply just a waste of money. We've wasted far too much money over the years. So again, like I said, it's the biggest transfer window for me for Everton Football Club in quite some time. And I'm not going to go into specific names, specific players, or you know, players that we'll need to bring in. But I want to talk about positions, because again, I said it in a couple of videos ago. I said I'm not really interested now in talking about the centre-back position, or talking about the potential of bringing in a Gabriel or a Jean-Claire Todibo. Before we talk about any of that, this midfield needs sorting, because it's become really evident over the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, certainly since the restart of Premier League football, but even before that, you know, throughout the entirety of the season, it's become quite evident that our midfield is not good enough whatsoever. It reminds me a little bit of the Ronald Koeman era, when he brought in, Ronald Koeman and Steve Walsh brought in about 4 or 5 midfielders who've done the exact same job. We had Gylfi Sigurdsson, Davy Klaassen, Wayne Rooney. We had all of these players that were there to do the exact same job. This feels a little bit similar. You've got Tom Davis, you've got Andre Gomez, you've got Fabian Delph in there, you've got Gylfi Sigurdsson, all players that do the same job. They don't do much off the ball. In fact, they don't do anything off the ball. There's no movement whatsoever, and when they're on the ball, they don't do an awful lot. There's no creativity, there's no energy, there's no fight, there's no passion, there's no want to win. So the midfield for me is absolutely imperative that it gets sorted before anything else. I would be relatively happy going into next season with our 3 centre-backs being Mason Holgate, Yerry Mina and Michael Keane. What I will be absolutely furious with is if we go into next season and we haven't signed at least 2 central midfielders. One explosive, aggressive midfielder who gets about the pitch, covers every blade of grass, box-to-box type, Garner-esque midfielder if you like, and one creative midfielder to aid the likes of Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because it's very, very clear at the moment that those 2 strikers, and even Moise Keane when he's coming on and he's being given his opportunity, there's no creativity whatsoever. They're feeding off scraps, and a lot of the times the players aren't even getting in the game because of that lack of creativity. So for me, it's absolutely imperative that Marcel Brands focuses on that centre midfield position going into this transfer window, because let's be honest, it's not good enough whatsoever. It really, really isn't. Having said that, if we can bring in 2 centre midfielders and then maybe look at centre back position, maybe look at the right back position, maybe look at right winger, then yeah, absolutely perfect. But those positions can be aided at different times for me, whereas the centre midfield position needs addressing as a matter of urgency. It really, really does. Talking about money being spent then and players coming in, obviously financial fair play is a big thing now, and we've just seen Manchester City had their ban overturned by UEFA because of breaching financial fair play. They were found guilty, I believe, because they still received a fine. However, that fine was decreased from around about 40 million to around about 10 million, and their potential ban from the Champions League and from Europe was completely lifted, so they will not receive a ban. Now, this has caused a lot of controversy on social media, caused a lot of people to say, right, okay, let's just ignore financial fair play now because there's absolutely no point in it whatsoever. Go out, spend 150 million, you'll get a slap on the wrist, but then you move on because it's very clear that they can't ban people, or they won't ban people because they can't adopt one rule for one and one rule for another because they haven't banned Manchester City. So go out, spend as much money as you want, get a slap on the wrist, get a fine, move on. And that seems to be the consensus within a lot of fans. I don't think Everton will approach that in that way. I don't think Everton will go out and go, fuck it, you know, what's the point anymore? Manchester City didn't get banned, so we're going to go out and spend another 500 million. Do we need to spend another 500 million? Probably. If we want to be a Champions League fighting team, if we want to be a team fighting for European competitions, fighting for the Premier League title, we probably do need to spend another 500 million pounds. But one thing that's more important than spending that much money is the way in which you spend it. The recruitment at Everton Football Club altogether over the past 4 or 5 years since Farhad Moshiri has joined has been not good enough. It has been absolutely awful under previous managers and in previous regimes, whether it be Roberto Martinez for sort of second season after obviously he brought in Lukaku and McCarthy, probably after that transfer window, whether it be Ronald Koeman and Steve Walsh, whether it be Sam Allardyce, whether it be Marco Silva, and whether it be Marcel Brands, the recruitment simply has not been good enough. We've brought in far too many players on far too much money who just aren't good enough for the football club. And when I say not good enough, I don't necessarily mean not technically good enough. Gylfi Sigurdsson is a technically good footballer. Yannick Bolasie is a technically good footballer. Davy Klaassen is a technically good footballer. I don't mean technically not good enough. I mean not good enough for the football club, either because they haven't got the desire, they haven't got the fight, they're not arsed in Gylfi Sigurdsson's case. They've got other issues such as massive injury problems and things that are going to keep them from playing for the football club in Yannick Bolasie's case, or they simply don't fit into the team and do not work with the style that we want to play in Davy Klaassen's case. And I actually think some of the recent signings fit into that as well. Alex Iwobi, for me, fits exactly into that similar category of Davy Klaassen, where he's a good technical player, but he simply does not fit our system and he does not work in this system. And for me, I'd be selling Alex Iwobi in this summer if a bid come in, because it's just not worked out for him and he just doesn't work at this football club. Not saying he's an awful footballer, not saying he's terrible. He's not great. Let's be honest, he's not great. He's a footballer that come in to play in a certain formation. Now, I understand that, and I understand that he's probably playing out of his preferred position, but if you're signing a player for £30-odd million, the least you can expect is that he can play in multiple positions. He doesn't have to be at the top of his game in multiple positions, but he should be able to at least carry himself for 90 minutes in a different position and do a semi-decent job. Whereas Alex Iwobi, if he's not in that number 10 cam position, he's absolutely dreadful and he shouldn't be playing. And that's something that we really need to focus on. Like I said, it's not too much focused on spending another 250 million pounds, because Everton could go out and do that and still be in the same position as we are now, because we could spend it on players that do not work with this football club. It's about going out and spending the money in a clever way, and we've seen under previous regimes at this football club how this hasn't worked. We spoke about prior to Farhad Moshiri's reign at the football club, when David Moyes was here and when we had no money and when we were bringing in players from the Championship or bringing in players from the lower leagues, and these players, not many people knew an awful lot about them, and would bring them in for little amounts of money and would either turn them into a superstar and ultimately get 5 or 6 decent years out of them and then sell them on for a profit, or they'd be shite, which, you know, a lot of us expected because we brought them in from lower teams, and then would sell them on or would move them on and we hadn't spent an awful lot of money on them. You know, Steve Walsh was used to doing that when he come into the football club. He'd previously worked for a Leicester who hadn't had an awful lot of money, weren't spending an awful lot of money, and he had been asked and touted with the job of going out and scouting really good players for low amounts of money who not many people know about. And he'd done it with Riyad Mahrez, he'd done it with N'Golo Kante. He brought those players in for very little money who not many people knew about. As soon as Steve Walsh was given all of the money in the world, it showed that he cannot handle that. He could not handle that responsibility of having hundreds and hundreds of million at his disposal. So instead of going out and looking for those players that are on the cusp of a second division side in England, whether it be a championship team or have got a little bit of talent but aren't necessarily in the headlights, he went out and brought players that everybody's talking about and everybody knows, regardless of whether he fits into the system or not, regardless of whether they were good enough or not, regardless of whether they had the right attitude or not. He just went out and bought them because they were big name players, and we might have needed a centre midfielder so let's go out and buy Davy Klaassen, or let's go out and re-sign Wayne Rooney because it's Wayne Rooney and he fits in. You know, it'd be a massive signing commercially. Yeah, it was a massive signing commercially, but it took £150,000 off the wage bill for a year of a player that he finished top scorer in that year, granted, and I'm not going to go too much into him, but did he give us much in terms of things? No, he didn't. And that was the issue that Steve Walsh had, and I think that's the issue that a lot of that Everton have had for a lot of the time since Farhad Moshiri's come in, and I was watching Toffee TV talk about this yesterday, and he got it absolutely spot on. One of the biggest problems that Farhad Moshiri had when he come into this football club is he didn't employ his own people. He trusted the people that were currently at the football club with all of the money and to make the decisions. He didn't come in and say, right, okay, I'm bringing in him and him to do the scouting, him to do the you know, player development or the academy development, him to do this, him to do that. He come in and he went, right, okay, we'll keep everybody that's in place now, and you can be trusted with this massive surge of money. Now, I understand that to a certain degree because he didn't want to come in and just sack everybody. I get that, but ultimately those people were used to working on low budgets. Those people were used to working with not a lot of money and making the most of what they had. When they got that massive amount of money, it was clear they could not deal with it, and he did not use it well. And now we're sitting here £500 million down the line, wasted money down the line, and we're looking at this squad and we're thinking we have to, you know, we may have to spend another 250-300 million for this to improve even slightly. Now, having said that, again, like I said, for me, it's about spending clever. It's about bringing in the right players at the right prices who not many people know about. I'd be happy going out spending 10 or 15 million pounds on a centre midfielder who was going to come in, do a job for Everton for 5 or 6 years, be very, very consistent, but no one's ever heard of him. Or rather than going out and spending £60 million on a European talent who everybody's heard of but is going to come in and not do the job and have the complete wrong attitude and not look interested. We've done that far too many times, and attitude is a big issue with this football club. Far too many times have we seen players come into this football club, be paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a week and blatantly show that they're not arsed and blatantly show that they're only here to pick up a wage and then fuck off. Seamus Coleman alluded to it at the end of the game against Wolves a couple of days ago. Everton were thrashed 3-0 by Wolves, and Seamus Coleman basically went and said there's far too many players in this football club who aren't showing their hardest, who aren't trying their hardest, who aren't playing, who simply look like they've only come here to pick up a wage and then they're going to leave. The captain of the football club who works with these people alluded to that message himself, so of course we're going to believe that as fans. And I don't blame, you know, a lot of these players are being offered stupid amounts of money to come in and play for an average Everton side, and most of the time they're either sitting on the bench or they're playing 10 or 15 minutes every other game, picking up a wage and fucking off. And that's not good enough. We simply can't be doing that anymore. We need to be looking at signings like Adissa Garnagay. Brought him in from a relegated Aston Villa. At the time we brought him in, a lot of people were saying, why have you brought him in? He's just been relegated with Aston Villa. He's not good enough. Come in. And he was our best player for the 3 or 4 years he was at the football club, and we could massively do with him now. We really could do with him now, like various other teams have done. Look at Sheffield United's team. It's not full of superstars. I don't know half the players. I couldn't name half the players. I couldn't tell you where they played for before they played for Sheffield United. Similarly with Burnley, couldn't tell you half the names, couldn't tell you where they played before they played for Burnley, but they're good quality players and they're playing a system, and those type of players are more likely to come in and give 110% because they've been given that opportunity. They've got a lot to prove. Did we honestly think that Fabian Delph was going to come into Everton and give 110% to take Everton to the next level? No. Why would he? He's just come out of playing for Manchester City where he's won all sorts of trophies. He's being paid 100 grand a week. He's probably thought, boss, I'll sit here. I'll just sit on the bench for a few weeks. I'll come on. I'll pass the ball around a bit. I'm not really that arsed. It'll be a nice retirement fund. Similarly with Theo Walcott. I don't want to go too much in on Theo because I think he's just an inconsistent average footballer, which is what he's been for most of his career. But it's similar with Theo Walcott. Various other players that were brought in over the years that are just coming in to pick up a wage. They haven't got that desire. They haven't got that want because their career is coming towards the end. That's the problem with bringing in players late on in the career, as they have no desire, they have no ambition, they have no goal, they have no end achievement because they've already done most of it that they wanted to do, so they're coming in at the end of their career. Of course they're not going to have as much ambition as an Adissa Garnagay, who was given an opportunity after being relegated to play in the Premier League again and wanted to prove something, as a Richarlison who come over from South America, played half a season in the Premier League and then was put down by a lot of Premier League watching fans because of how, you know, inconsistent he was towards the back end of his Watford career. Come to Everton, was given an opportunity, has paid it all back to him. We need to start looking at players who are at the start of their careers and are fighting for something, and stop looking at players who are coming towards the end of their careers just because they've won a Premier League, or just because they've got the experience, or just because they've been there and done that. Yet they've been there and done that, but most of the time they're coming into Everton to pick up a wage and sit around and have an easy ride. They're not coming to Everton to go, right, okay, I want to go and do it again. I want to go and win the Premier League again like I've just done with this club. I want to go and win the Champions League again like I've just done with this club. They're thinking, I've already won all of that, so I'm just going to come in, sit off, act cushy, get a few, you know, £100,000 in my bank every week, and then retire at the end of my contract. No, we do not need those players. We need younger players, and players that are hungry, and players that are ready to prove something. Look at the players that we brought in from Championship clubs: Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison. Not Richarlison. Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Mason Holgate. Look at Richarlison coming in from South America, and then we bringing him in from a Watford side that he was struggling in. All players that have something to prove, all players that have got goals, that have got achievements they want to get to, that have got a ladder to climb up in their footballing career. Not players that are at the top and that are falling down the ladder, players that are ready to climb up the ladder. We need to be after those sorts of players. It's not just about going out and spending 150, 200 million pounds. It's about clever recruitment. And one thing Everton haven't done well for 5 or 6 years is recruit cleverly. We just haven't. We've gone out and we've bought big names because of their name and because of their price tag, and we've gone, fuck it, have 30 million here, 40 million here, 45 million pound for Gylfi Sigurdsson. Are you mad? Paying him 150 grand a week, it's disgraceful. It's not good enough, and we have to recruit much cleverly this summer. Much more clever this summer, sorry, I don't think that's a word. And yet we'll probably still need another 150, 200 million pound, even if we recruit with, you know, in a clever manner. But I'd rather spend the 150 million pounds on players that you know are going to come in, work hard, get their head down and work for your football club, than 150 million pounds on 3 players that have won Premier Leagues before but ultimately aren't asked about the football club. It's about those players with the desire, with the heart, with the fight. Like we've just mentioned about your Sheffield Uniteds and your Burnleys, both teams that have got players full of fight, full of desire, full of passion, players that want to prove something, players that have been told all their career, you're not that great, you're not going to be a Premier League player, you know, you're only playing for Sheffield United, they're not that great, and I've got something to prove, and fight as a team and fight for each other. There's no fight in this side for either themselves or each other, and that's something that we massively need to work on. A goalkeeper is something else for me that, you know, Marcel Brands has to look at, because it's imperative that we bring in another goalkeeper this summer, whether it be backup for Jordan Pickford or whether it be a replacement for Jordan Pickford. Jordan Pickford cannot go another season with a 30-odd-year-old backup Premier League goalkeeper who everybody knows isn't good enough to play week in, week out. He needs a young goalkeeper to keep him on his toes or to get him out the side, because we're seeing far too many inconsistent performances from Jordan Pickford, far too many mistakes, and if he's not looking like he's not arsed, he's making clear mistakes. And for me, I think part of that is because he knows there's no competition and he knows he's not going to get stopped, and maybe part of that is because he thinks he's better than what he is. In order for that to change and for that to be totally cut out, he needs that competition. Now, talking about Marcel Brands then, in his favour, because again, I don't just want to sit here and go in on Marcel Brands. I think he's made some signings that ultimately haven't worked and that he needs to move on now. I think this transfer window, like I said, is the biggest for Marcel Brands. He's going to be given another contract because it's difficult for a director of football to implement his ideas in 3 years, certainly when there's been such a significant change of manager between that period. So he's probably going to be given another contract. But for me, I think if this summer transfer window doesn't work in our favour and we don't bring in the players that we need to and we don't fulfil the positions that we need to, i.e. central midfield, then I think for me, I'll be watching Marcel Brands very, very carefully. But in his favour, like I said, Stephen Leary put out a fantastic tweet a couple of days ago, really, really good tweet, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying it on the video, but he said, "You recruit a very good director of football who accepts the owner's choice of manager Silva," Marco Silva in quotes, who then says he wants to play a 4-3-3. So the director of football buys for a 4-3-3, then the manager never plays a 4-3-3 and elects to play a 4-2-3-1. So that's practically saying that Marcel Brands come into the football club, accepted Farhad Moshiri's choice of Marco Silva. Marco Silva and Marcel Brands sat down and stated, right, okay, we're going to play a 4-3-3. So he brought players like Bernard into the football club. He brought players like Andre Gomes to fit into that midfield. He brought players like Moise Keane in more recently. But then Marco Silva chose to play a totally different formation, which took the certain players completely out of the equation. So then the manager never plays 4-3-3 and elects to play 4-3-2-1. We then fire him for a 4-4-2 manager and no players fit it. So let's blame the director of football. That is why I'm not diving on Marcel Brands' head too much, because I agree with pretty much everything said in that tweet. It's very, very difficult for us to blame Marcel Brands because of the current players not fitting the system when we've had a change of manager and Carlo Ancelotti plays such a different system to A, what Marco Silva played, and B, what Marco Silva said he was going to play in the first place. price. Now, having said that, like I said, that's why this summer transfer window for me is absolutely imperative. It's the biggest transfer window since Marcel has been at the football club, and it's the biggest transfer window in years, because not only is it a transfer window where we need to get it massively right in terms of the recruitment and the money that we're spending, but, you know, also, listen, you know, we can't afford to go into next season with the current squad. Last season, you could have said, right, okay, we could do with additions, we could do with more, you know, better players, but we could probably would be okay. Obviously, this was before Adesina Gay left the football club, and this was before we knew John Philip Caban was going to come in and be massively injured. So at that point, at the end of last season, we could say, right, we could probably go into next season and be okay. We cannot go into next season with this current squad. We will fight relegation if we go into the next season with this midfield. We just can't. Also, on top of that, like I said, the recruitment has to be spot on, and Carlo Ancelotti has to be able to bring in the players that he wants. Having said that, we know that the transfer window hasn't kicked off yet, and that Marcel Brands, for me, should at least be given this transfer window to prove that he can go out there, he can work with Carlo Ancelotti, and he can bring in the right players for the football club at the right time. Not players coming towards the end of the career with dreadful attitudes who can't be arsed. Not players for big money because of their name, like James Rodriguez or Philippe Coutinho. Players that people have probably not heard of, but are going to come in and do a fantastic job, who are consistent, who have got fight, who have got desire, who have got end goals where they want to be at, where they want to fight for the football club, where they want to get better, where they want to improve every week. Not players that are just there for the ride and to pick up £100,000 a week. Also players that aren't going to cost 100 million, 200 million, 50 million, whatever. Players that you could bring in 10 or 15 million, and they're going to be with us for 4 or 5 years, and they're going to give us 4 or 5 very, very good years at the football club. So yeah, there you go. Like I said, listen, I think that's a boss tweet from Stephen, and I agree. I think, you know, we have to reserve our opinions on Marcel Brands for me until at least the summer transfer window, when he's had a full transfer window with Carlo Ancelotti, and when he can decide, you know, when we can decide if he's had a successful window. Yes, some of the players he's brought in have not been good enough and have been dreadful decisions, such as Fabian Delph or Alex Iwobi. You know, even Moise Keane hasn't worked. Moise Keane's come in, and recently he hasn't looked like he knows how to play striker whatsoever. But again, like I said, he bought those for a different situation, for a different manager, for a different formation, for different tactics. So let's see what we can do this summer with Carlo Ancelotti, and obviously the new tactics and the way in which we play, and the fact that we so desperately need certain positions filling this summer, because we cannot go into next season like this. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. Let me know your thoughts on the video, of course, in the comment section down below. If you've enjoyed, like I said, please hit the like. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. Flying towards 2,000 subscribers now, so if you could hit that subscribe button, it would mean a massive, massive amount to me. Big thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow live, 5:15 PM with a live game preview to Aston Villa versus Everton, or Everton Aston Villa, should I say, at Goodison Park. Not looking forward to that one, but we'll do the preview, of course. Big thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you've enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you tomorrow at 5:15 PM. I'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.